Okay, well, it's 12:01. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, to our weekly installment of the Friday Career Connection at Southern Utah University grad and online programs. My name is Tad Brinkerhoff. I'm the Associate Vice President for grad and online programs and excited to welcome you here to our Friday Career Connection. Our goal with this podcast slash webinar is to really bring our online and graduate community together to talk about how we build our careers. And to do that, we invite alumni from Southern Utah University to really talk about their career journey, what worked for them, what did they learn along the way, and how can we can benefit from that and their experience as we all build our own careers through education at Southern Utah University or other formats. So we're really excited. This is our second installment this week, and we're excited to have Brandon Day here with us today. Brandon connected with me on LinkedIn, and I saw his profile, and I thought we need him on this show. Brandon has a great love for SUU, he was a former student body president. I'm not going to steal his thunder because we want to hear from him, but we're going to go ahead and turn the time over to Brandon to share his career journey. And then, as usual, we'll have some questions from the audience, as well as I have some prepared questions. Brandon and I met earlier, and I think we'll have some really good discussion today on how we build our careers. And one thing that came of that conversation that we had with Brandon, a career is not a straight line. It'll go up and down, it'll go different directions, and that's what we're excited to hear from Brandon about how his career trajectory has varied and weaved and gone in different directions. So, Brandon, we'll turn it over to you.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Tad. First of all, it's great to be with all of you. I have loved my time at SUU. It's been fun being more engaged, even just the last 6 months since being back near and in Cedar City. And so I'm used to giving like a 60-second elevator pitch. I'll give you all a little bit longer version. But as we go through this, please know that I'm here as your friend, as your mentor. I'm very open and transparent. So questions in the chat are great. And we'll go from there. I grew up in Roy. It's up near Ogden in northern Utah. Most people would associate it with more of a ghetto. Having grown up, I didn't have that opinion, and it was fantastic. My junior year in high school, I got invited to apply to the Governor's Honors Academy. Ended up getting in as one of, I think 50 or 60 rising seniors, and spent about 10 days here on SUU's campus and fell in love with SUU. As I'd been considering universities, I knew personally I didn't want to go to Weber State or Utah State because they felt a little bit too much like high school. But I also didn't really want to go to the U or BYU. And I was a big outdoorsy person. And so it fit. Having the scholarship from GHA just solidified that. And so I came down in 2011, spent a year, got involved in SUUSA, and we'll talk about kind of challenges in your career. That was maybe my first challenge. I came with the intention and desire to be a presidential ambassador and did not make the cut. So I instead was able to join SUUSA and worked with the student body president and Lauren Kilpack and a few there. I then left for 2 years and served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Johannesburg, South Africa. I returned in 2014, actually interviewed while I was on my mission and got a position in the SUUSA. And so came back and was engaged from day one on marketing. Completed my business degree. I studied business management here in 2017. During that time, I met my wife, Angie. I was student body president in 2015 to 2016, and I had every intention of being student body president in 2016, 2017, and ultimately decided not to run for a second term, which was also influential. It wasn't necessarily career, But in that aspect, it was, I was weighing trade-offs, and so we can get into that. Graduated in 2011, in 2017, and because I didn't have a clear plan on my career trajectory after graduation, I was just heads down with the different organizations on campus. I was caught off guard a little bit. I spent a year and I managed trips and adventures here at SUU Outdoors because I intentionally wanted to learn from Rob Myers. I felt that he had a very different leadership style, and that those soft skills would pay off in the long run, even though monetarily it was not a strong financial position. About halfway through there, I ended up meeting Carl Peterson, who was a division manager for Zwick Construction. They're a large commercial general contractor here in Utah, and met him at a athletic event tied to the university. He was looking for some project managers here in Southern Utah, and ultimately ended up joining Zwick Construction and became their youngest project manager. Worked for them for 3 years and actually was able to return to campus for a project or two, which was fun. Towards the end of that time, I was wanting a little different taste, and we can get into some of the trade-offs and things I was seeing at that point. I'd decided a while ago that probably in undergrad that I had an interest at an MBA. Thought that would open up a lot of doors and had a lot of mentors. I had evaluated doing my MBA through SUU, which ultimately I would have been paid to get my degree here, but also had a number of mentors encouraging me to go bigger and go to a more prestigious institution for my MBA, which I ultimately did. So spent 3 years at Zwick, left in 2020 to go and earn my MBA at Cornell at the Johnson Graduate School of Management there in upstate New York. It was an incredible experience, very challenging to go from Utah, where in construction in Utah, where COVID didn't exist, to New York, where COVID lasted 3 times longer than Utah's experience. Had a great experience at Cornell, interned at Deloitte in their consulting arm, and then ultimately took a full-time position for the Boston Consulting Group. They are, depending on who you reference, they are either the first or second largest and most prestigious strategy consulting firm in the world. We had about 25,000 employees spread across the globe, primarily working with private equity, Fortune 500 companies, the largest governments in the country, and was there for about 2.5 to 3 years. Ultimately decided to make another pivot as I had 3 kids, little kids at that point, and made the intentional choice to come back to Cedar City to really put down roots, raise our kids here. And the opportunity that brought us back was joining Goodboro as a partner on our Penny Farm community. It's a 150-acre planned community in Enoch, just off of Minersville Highway. And so I am wearing multiple hats there, from construction to finance, marketing, et cetera. So excited to be with you all today and dig in a little bit deeper.
Thanks, Brandon. Interesting trajectory from construction to Ithaca, New York, to back to Cedar City. So we're glad you made it back. I'm going to open the floor up for questions. I do have, while you're thinking about those questions, I'd love to hear your thoughts on leadership. You were a student leader and you moved to a top MBA program. And I'm sure they taught you a lot about leadership. You made a pivot from a large corporation to a smaller corporation. Talk to me what you've learned about leadership. What makes a good leader? How has your leadership changed with each of those moves? And how does that play into managing a career?
Great question. So leadership varies to an extent. I think it first takes an understanding of you as a person, where your strengths are. Are you going to be a more of a commanding, outspoken leader, or are you going to lead almost more from behind as uh, bringing the whole team along as more collaborative? Or maybe two of the more common styles that I've seen. So really understanding yourself and where to lean into. Leading an organization or anything takes confidence, whether you feel confident inside or not. It takes adapting your skill sets and being comfortable with being uncomfortable. I'm an introvert, and most people would not realize that because I can stand in front of a room, I can lead a meeting, with very little preparation. But where I have learned to excel as a leader is really leaning into understanding the people around me, what makes them tick, where their strengths lie, how you motivate them. Because ultimately, especially as I looked at my experience at BCG in particular, the leaders are not doing the work most of the time. They are paid to make a few very difficult decisions every day and to ensure that their teams are aligned to a vision and moving forward and making that happen. And so when you think of your career and really leading out your career and thinking of future positions, it's identifying that vision and where you're going, what those key milestones are to get there, and then really making it happen yourself and with those around you, and understanding the strengths of you and people on your team, and how to work together to make that happen.
Great. So I want to do a follow-up question on that. Do you believe leaders are made or born? And does everyone have potential to be a leader, or should everyone be a leader?
That last question is interesting. I don't think leaders are born. Leaders are certainly made. Anybody that wants to be can be a leader and should be a leader. There's plenty of avenues to do that. Will everybody become a CEO of a company? In terms of leadership, no. But there's lots of opportunities for leadership, whether through an official title, and you are defined as the leader, or more commonly, just by association. I think people dismiss that type of leadership where you are known as the person in the organization that knows what's going on about this topic. And if they need to know something, they're coming to you. That's leadership. So absolutely anybody can be a leader, and can be trained up. Should everybody be a leader? I think that's a personal question. There's plenty of people that I know that are fantastic, that could be an excellent leader in that defined position, that excel best in what they do, and they're happy with it, and they become a point of reference in their own sphere of influence, and they still influence organizations just in a different way. So should somebody be at the top in a forced leadership position? Not necessarily. Some people are also, quite frankly, just fine. They want to be told what to do. They want a 8 to 5, 9 to 5 job. They don't want stress after work. That's fine. And that's part of defining what is important to you in a career. Personally, I've never been that person. So I've always been kind of either put into leadership positions or created my own path into them. And so it's really person dependent, I would say.
Yeah. Good perspective. Yeah. One thing I've learned over the years, leadership can mean different things for different people, but I really like what you said about the sphere of influence. I think we all have potential to lead within our sphere of influence. It's just defining what that is, and how we want to make change within that sphere of influence. For me, leadership is about change. So yeah, good perspective. We have a couple of questions
Absolutely.
online in the chat. I'll read them for our audience really quickly. says, Brandon, you mentioned over and over about evaluating different decisions you made from running for student body president a second term to choosing a lower paying job for the benefit of soft skills to going to a different area for grad school and ultimately coming back to Iron County. Tell us about your decision-making process for those big moves.
Um, it's an important one and one I continue to shape. Um, I do a few things. First, as I'm evaluating any decision, large decision or otherwise, um, I determine what my goals are and where my values are. So where am I trying to go in the career? It's if you think 5 or 10 years down the road, where do I want to be? What is most important to me? Um, Family, location, prestige, financial gain, etc. Um, there's no bad ones. I think around here, that was one that it took me a while to be comfortable with, that I liked being seen as successful. I liked being around important people, and I'm very financially motivated. And it took me being at SUU and some key mentors to feel okay about that instead of feeling like shame. Um, so understanding where your goals are, and where your values are, and then really digging into your options that have either come your way, options that you're going out to pursue. And then the last piece for me that's maybe unique, having been married for 10 years, my wife does not want anybody to be involved in her plans. She wants to tell people when her plans have become a reality, and she's like, oh yeah, this is 3 years in the works. I'm the opposite. I want to talk to everybody and get perspective from people that have been there, that have different perspective, people that I look up to. And so I always bring that in. And then the last for me is faith and a belief in a divine power that wants the best for us. And so I'll always incorporate that as well. In terms of running for student body president, I was involved in SUUSA for 2 years. I understood a little bit about what the student body president did. And as I evaluated it, there were key initiatives that Jeff Hertig, the president before me, had in place that I knew I had the skill set to continue. One of those being the Charwan Student Center renovation that had been attempted by 10 student body presidents. There was money in the bank, and they could not align administrators to approve the final concept to actually happen. And I went, I can do that. I also saw student body president as a position where was not a partier. It was a professional position where you sat on the president's council and sat on the board of trustees and really represented all students, not just a few select populations. So I felt very confident in my skills and abilities and my desire, and it felt really good going into it. My team started coming together. And so that was honestly pretty easy. What was harder was realizing my second term that I had initiatives that I wanted to see through, but I was so burned out after the first year. I got married 3 weeks into school, and that first year of marriage was very hard with the demands of student body president. And I thought I could do this really well for 6 months. I can't do this very well for 12 months. And can I be the leader I need to be of the people around me and to truly represent the students well? And ultimately, my answer was no. And so that's why I chose to not run a second term. And that was very hard. And then it was hard to see my peers who I supported and expected to win not, and they go to another party, which was fine. They ended up doing a great job, but that's just one of the realities with decisions. The other big one was, do I do my MBA at SUU? I have a position, it's fully paid. I have a house here. I know everybody. I can be done in a year. Or do I work for 3 years and then go to grad school? It's a path I don't know anybody has taken. And SUU might feel expensive, but compared tuition to 75,000 bucks a year at Cornell, I was looking at, plus a higher cost of living in New York. I was like, is a Cornell MBA or a top tier MBA really worth $250,000 out of my own pocket and my future pocket, you know? And that was really hard. And I evaluated it a lot. I had very large career ambitions. I wanted to be in the C-suite, and really three people on campus came through. I had people on both sides. Jared Tippett was encouraging me to go bigger and broader and chase that. Eric Levitt was the chair of the board of trustees, who I'd gotten to know well, and same thing. He'd gotten his MBA at University of Rochester, and encouraged me to go as big as I could. But ultimately, it was Rich Christensen that's been involved in the entrepreneurship space on campus, and then the board of trustees. And for him, he got his MBA at BYU, has been very successful in his own right. And he looked at me and he says, Brandon, you're ambitious. And I know you'll be successful no matter what, whether you go to school here at SUU or you go to a big school. But I can tell you, if I have one regret about doing my BYU MBA and not going to a top tier, it's that if I was to go back, I would try and get into Harvard or somewhere equivalent, because 99% of people are not going to care where you got your education. And I've had one or two instances as an entrepreneur where I could not get in the door because I did not have a top tier MBA. And in those instances, I had to reach out to somebody in my network that was a Harvard grad that got me in the door. And it's amazing. Once I was in the door, they loved it. And we ended up doing business together. But it was really frustrating. And so as I looked at myself, I never wanted to be in that position going forward, where I knew I could be successful and I was limited by some arbitrary piece of paper. And so that's really what helped push me over the edge. And I can sit here now being back and going, it was a great experience. And I think there's a lot of validity to that with my aspirations, even though my aspirations have changed a little bit. So decisions, catch your vision, determine your values, and my perspective, discuss it with people that have been there or will give you a different perspective to weigh in as well.
Perfect. Yeah, values really make a difference once you've identified those. Okay, we've got a whole bunch of other questions. This is exciting. Thank you, everyone, for submitting those. We have a question this is the question. In what ways has stepping outside your comfort zone shaped your career trajectory and who you are today?
I'm not scared of doing anything. And that's probably the biggest thing. I know that I can be successful with anything I put my mind to. And a lot of it's my effort, but I know that the people around me, I can get on board with and be successful. Coming out of SUU, I very much had this, maybe you'll know the terminology, but I thought I could never be up there because I'm from a small town. I'm from a small school. You know, those people are so much smarter, so much more well-equipped than I am. And having gone to Cornell, having been at BCG, having sat in rooms of CEOs and executives of Fortune 500s, I can tell you that they are not smarter. Some of them work harder, but if you want to work that hard, you can too. It's that they were willing to put themselves out there and make it happen. And that was eye-opening to go, sure, I was top of my class here at SUU. Well, guess what? I went into Cornell, and I can tell you I didn't have the GMAT score that they advertised. I didn't have the credentials. I didn't work for a big corporate firm. I was coming out of construction, typically a blue-collar work, and I'm going into consulting, which is very white-collar and prestigious. And I was top of my class at Cornell, and I succeeded and did really well at BCG. And so that's probably the other biggest thing is by putting yourself out of your comfort zone, you get more, you just grow in your capability. I think it's Adam Grant at Wharton at University of Pennsylvania, one of his classes, they do something every week to get themselves uncomfortable. Things like he'll say, for homework this week, you need to go down in a restaurant and you have to lay on the floor for 5 minutes in the middle of the line, and you can't answer anybody. You just have to get comfortable with that. And guess what? When you do that, it's no big deal to cold call somebody, you know? So it's a muscle that you develop over time.
That's a good point. When I graduated SUU, I was also involved in student government, and I decided to take a job in Japan. And Sally Cooper, who was the director of student services, like, "What are you doing? That's insane." She's like, "You don't know anybody and you don't speak the language." I said, "That's the point, you know, that's the whole reason of going is to meet new people and to, but it is uncomfortable. I mean, I can tell you lots of uncomfortable experiences, but you're absolutely right, especially in today's environment with AI and so many things happening in the job market. You're going to have to reinvent yourself 2 to 3 or 4 times maybe. And to reinvent yourself, it does take courage and it does take feeling uncomfortable. So, yeah, very good point. Okay, next question. When an opportunity you go for doesn't work out, what is your philosophy on what to do next? For example, you weren't selected for the President's Ambassador program, but went to USAA. SUUSA, excuse me, that's my insurance company, USA. This happens all through life, throughout life for everyone. What's your perspective, advice on how to handle these disappointments? That's a great question.
It is a great question. Um, I'll take you to one that hits hard. So in the top tier MBA sphere, we refer to it as the sage bubble. You probably had something similar at Cranard or Tepper, where you are amongst the top tier people, type A. They've been successful in everything they've done all through life. They have this big dream and vision. You're working. I can tell you the first semester I was at MBA, I spent 1/3 on school and 2/3 on career prep. Let that sink in. For every 4 hours I was in class or doing homework or studying, I was spending 8 hours working on my resume, interview prep, looking up companies, prepping for interviews, etc. That's how serious it is. And so you do this, your whole first semester is that you drop applications near Thanksgiving, and then all of winter break, you're getting rejections. We had 4 or 6 weeks off, and every day you end up with half a dozen rejections in your email while your peers are landing interviews, and you're seeing this, or you get people with early offers and they can just relax and you're just pushing, and it's so dang hard. And then you start to interview and you get rejected and rejected. And what I learned in those instances is, first of all, it's okay to feel that rejection. You do an interview, you get a call back or an email, and you didn't get the offer. And so what we did as peers is we always had somebody. There was usually a tight-knit group of 2 to 4 of us, and you would text or call each other when you got good news or bad news, and you just talked through it. And then a lot of the time the news came out in the evening, and you might have another big interview the next day. And so you can either push it off and just fake it, and then it just builds up. For me, what I found is it was helpful just to take a couple hours and just embrace it. And sometimes I'd like bundle up in a blanket and pajamas on the couch and watch a TV show with Angie and just say, this sucks. What am I even doing here? I'm never gonna, and you just feel it. And then it's so much easier to just let it go and move on. You wake up the next day and you tackle the next interview. You look for the next opportunity. So it's going to happen, but you've always got to find ways to feel it, to be able to turn yourself inside and go, is this something that I know that I screwed up and I can change? Did I bomb a couple of questions in my interview? Well, I got to tighten up my responses and have a better example. or is it just you're going to interview at 10 places and maybe get an offer at one, and just keep moving forward and know that each individual experience does not define you, that you have value and worth no matter what. And you've got to be confident in that, despite the externalities and the things that are going to happen with you. And then you just always keep your eyes peeled, keep pushing forward. You watch for that door that's opening that might be clear down in the next building, and you don't see it yet, but you're only going to find it if you keep walking forward.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I've worked with MBA students for many years and had those conversations many, many times. And one thing I would always direct them to is let's look at the numbers. I'm sure Cornell, I'm sure you were probably 90 to 95% placed. So what can you do to increase the odds that you're in that 95%? So sometimes taking the emotion out of it and looking at the hard numbers can make a difference. And
Mm-hmm.
hopefully encourage you to like assess what I can do to increase my numbers or my odds and so that the odds will be in your favor. So good point.
And it is. I think numbers are helpful. So take it from a career perspective. I'm sure you've done this at Cornell. We had enough years that we could say, okay, if you want to land a position in consulting, it's not going to happen for everybody. But if you put in the effort, that means you're going to have probably 10 core companies that you've invested 20 hours into during the semester each. So that's 200 hours between those 10 companies. And then you're going to drop applications at another 50 to 100. And from there, you're going to get maybe 12 interviews, 5 interviews. And then your conversion rate on that is maybe 10 to 20%. So I was tracking that throughout the semester too. Like, do I have enough conversations at my key companies? Am I dropping enough applications? How are my interviews coming in? And so when I had 6 interviews that are going to be spread out through January, I go, I'm going to land one of those. And so when the rejection comes from those first 2 or 3, I can go, well, my odds are tighter, but I've got that one out of the way. I've got that one out of the way. It's a numbers game. So
Yeah.
very important call out there. You'll see the same thing in sales or anything else. If your conversion rate on a sales call, cold calling is I got to dial 100 numbers to get 2 sales. Guess what? Every 50 calls that I make, I should pick up 1. And so that makes the 40 that tell me no. I just mean I'm getting that much closer.
Yeah,
So
so true. So true. I was talking to someone the other day and they're like, yeah, a master's degree is not going to be worth it. I'm probably not going to make any more money. And I started thinking about that. It's like, well, nothing's a guarantee, but does it increase the odds that you will have more career success or will the learning influence outcomes? I'm a big proponent of education. Yeah, is there a guarantee? No. Like when you went to Cornell, that's a huge risk, right? But the numbers, I'm sure you use numbers to assess that risk. And I think with getting an education, our students that are listening today and the on the program today have invested knowing that it may or may not pay off. But the odds, if you look at the data, show that it will be a good investment. So thank you for that. Uh,
absolutely.
Next question. Can you share an example of a time when leadership wasn't about authority, but about influence?
Yeah, it's a good question, Taylor. I remember a few climbing classes and being around each other in SU Outdoors back when I was going to school. So it's fun to see you here. At BCG, there was one example. So consulting's a little weird. You usually have small sprints, teams coming in from different offices that have never worked together, and you have very high expectations. So we worked for one client that was doing automotive fleets, and it was a 6-week case. And after about 2.5 weeks, they rolled off 2 or 3 people and brought me on. So I'm behind the game, but I don't know the team. They've been working together 100 hours a week for 3 weeks already, and they know each other. And I'm brought in to basically say this problem that should be halfway fixed is like 10% fixed. You got 3 weeks. come figure it out. And it was interesting. I came in as a consultant of 10 people. But I had no weight with the client. I hadn't been there. I wasn't in a leadership position. I was a junior consultant. And the biggest piece for me to come in was that first couple of days sitting down with a few key clients, getting information out and understanding where their frustrations were, what they had access to, and who additional key people were. And just getting to know them as a person to develop that trust. And it was a very different experience than who they'd worked with before, that it was all emails and going back and forth. And by the end of the 3 weeks, I can tell you that we got 95% of to where we needed to. But those people in the team I was working with, because I cared about the humans, they understood that what we were doing there was not to take their job, but to help them streamline their processes, make them more efficient. And by having that influence, I was able to get the information out when things didn't work. I was able to come back and say, this didn't work, or we did this and it worked, but it's not quite the outcome that we talked about initially. So having this, how do we need to adapt? And by the end of those 3 weeks, I went from like the new guy on the team, pigeonholed in this corner to figure this thing out, to one of the go-tos for clients and for my teammates. And still to this day, I talk to many of them. We only worked together for 3 weeks, but because of that exchange and understanding my strengths and where to use them and have that leadership by influence, we covered a lot of ground in a short amount of time.
Yeah. I like the question because I think influence carries so much more weight than authority. And I think that's in business, and also if you've ever had children, parenting, authority only goes so far. But influence, I
Yeah.
think, has a greater impact. So, okay, thank you for that.
And you'll see that in career, everybody. I thought if you work the hardest, if you're the smartest, etc., you're going to be the leader. You're going to be the most important. You'll be paid the most. That's so wrong. It's really, where do you have influence, and that influence goes so much farther than like the hard technical skills that so many people focus on. It just makes a night and day difference in your career and life in general.
Yeah, agreed. All right, next question. Do you have advice for someone who may feel stuck in the trajectory of their career and are not sure about what the next step is, especially someone who is not willing to take risks? Wow, I can't wait to hear
Yeah,
the answer to this.
it's a good question. Sierra, are you comfortable coming off mute and telling us any more? It's okay if you're not.
I don't have any more information, just asking for a friend.
Got it. Okay. So I think it's a real thing, especially today, with AI becoming so much more impactful. Companies are hiring less. There's a lot of unknown out there, and there's a lot of defeat in the job search. I from applications, feeling like there's a bunch of just fake job openings and things out there, or you're spinning your wheels somewhere. So I think it's really understanding where you're stuck. So do you have a job? Are you happy there, but you want to go higher? You're not getting that promotion, you're not getting the raise, etc. The way to tackle that is to really work with who's making those decisions, your manager, etc. Sit down and say, This is kind of how I'm feeling. This is where I want to be. From my research and what I'm seeing, these are some key elements that I'm working towards, and these are some efforts that I plan and I'm already underway. And if I achieve these things, I expect to have the promotion, the raise, etc. This is my perspective and best that I can do. Can you give me yours? And you work with them to really identify, great, what are those key steps to further your career? Where are you at? And a lot of the time they'll say, okay, this is also where I see you succeeding, and these are very easy for you. These are areas that are going to be difficult. And so let's work together, maybe have a more frequent check-in. Let's use some of our business development costs to help send you to trainings, et cetera, you know, and get you there. They also might say, yes, these are accurate, but you're missing this other couple of key elements. So let's incorporate those. And what that does is that aligns expectations for you. It gives you a path forward, and it also creates a commitment from them. So if you do these things, I will get this. And so in your biannual or annual reviews, you then have a framework to come into the meeting prepared. And if you're on top of it, which you should be, a couple weeks before that review, you're sending it to them saying, hey, remember we talked about this last year. This is the progress I've made. This is where I think I've done really well. This is where, you know, I'm still working. Can't wait for our conversation in 2 weeks. And it gives them time to really pull it in. And a lot of the time they're making decisions before they meet with you. And so you've got to be ahead of that by 2 to 4 weeks. If you're in a career, in a business that you want to proceed and you're stuck. I think one other aspect with that also applies to maybe you as students that are looking at the career trajectory is really understanding what market expectations are for pay, for roles, for expectations, and working to those. If you're not in a position and you're applying for jobs, for instance, there's a couple of key steps that I did not appreciate at SUU and really got an education on at Cornell as they focus so much on their career. And which is one reason I'm so excited to have Tad back on campus, because he's seen that, he's lived it, and you will be amazed at what happens career service wise on campus because of Tad's experience. So if you're feeling stuck on that kind of getting into your career, taking the next step from an education standpoint or an application, are you sending out a bunch of applications but not getting interviews or responses? Cool. That's easy. You go back to yourself and go, could be my resume. It's probably my resume, and it's probably my networking. And so am I talking to people but not getting applications? It's your resume. Am I just sending out cold and nobody knows I'm applying to the company? That's your networking. So you go back and you go, which companies do I need to focus on? You get your vision, and you never just drop applications. Like, your conversion rate on that is like 0.05%. If you have one conversation in a company, you're probably going to go up to a 20% chance. Companies we were serious about at Cornell, I would have 5 to 6 conversations and be at their events. Like, it is a commitment to get to know them, to understand their culture, because that not only builds relationships in the company, that helps you understand what that company's culture is, if you would fit, what the roles and expectations of a position would be. So then you're able to tailor your resume. They know your resume is coming. You drop your resume, you send an email to the people you've been talking to and say, hey, I'm so excited, so grateful for our conversation 2 months ago. I just applied, so grateful for it. And they go, fantastic. Sierra just applied. I'm going to make sure that I float her resume to the hiring manager. Increases your odds tremendously. If your networking's on point, if your resumes are good, you're getting interviews and you're not converting, it's in your interview prep. So you've got to really evaluate your questions, your responses, your previous experiences, work with peers, work with coaches. I was very cheap. I came up from like a school teacher, farming community background. We were not poor, but my parents grew up poor. And so when they made it to the middle class, we still had a lot of those poor tendencies, and I love them to death. And I learned a lot from it, but we did not pay for coaching. We did not pay for tutors. I can tell you that the people at the big schools are definitely doing that. So it's going to be $100, $200 an hour. You just factor in, if you're stuck there, allocate $500, allocate $1,000 to coaching for somebody that does this every day. You will be amazed at how they can help you. And they might say, you've got these great experiences, you have a gap for the roles you're applying to here. So figure out a school project, figure out a local business, do something to fill that. And then you should hopefully be converting at that point. So that was a long answer, different couple of scenarios. Hopefully that was helpful to you, Sierra, and your friend, depending on where you're getting stuck at, really understand which aspect you are in the career journey, and it's steps. So you can focus your effort on those steps.
Yeah, I would confirm that 100%. What you say is spot on. You know, coaching is expensive, but there also are resources here at Southern Utah University that don't cost. Um, I work with students all the time. We've got some amazing people in the Career Center. We've got faculty. So there are resources there. It's just making the initial contact. So I really liked what you said there.
And you have alumni. Reach
Yeah,
out. We're
you've got
here.
Brandon
If there's
Day.
one thing I've heard from alumni, one thing I've experienced as an alumni is I'm not going to be coaching 100 students, but if I have a hungry student reach out to me, I can tell you I take at least a couple calls every year, and some have been their own cold outreach, and some have been a Jared Tippett's calling and saying, hey, I've got this ambitious student that's wanting to get into consulting or has this or that. Will you talk to him? Absolutely. And guess what? I'll talk to them every other week if they want. You know, if there's one thing SUU does well, the alumni care about current students and the success of our T-Birds. And so don't be afraid to reach out to somebody at a company, to somebody in a position, to somebody on campus who then can make a connection for you. Incredible resources out there.
100%. All right. We've got about 10 minutes left, and we got 3 questions we want to get to. The next question is, in what ways has your SUU education continued to influence your professional growth and career trajectory?
It's always going to be there. I look back at the foundational education I received at the School of Business and continue to draw on it daily. And then the network. It's not as large as Cornell, but it is still impactful. And my role here at Goodborough stems back to SUU. And this is maybe one with networking. A lot of people fear networking. They think it's awkward. You just got to be a person, a human. I mentioned earlier, I'm an introvert. I hate being up at the front of the room. I hate going to events where I do not know anybody. It's the most awkward thing. And I can tell you, it takes a lot of energy for me to initiate multiple conversations in a night with people I do not know. And so I do 2 things. If I know somebody there, I either go to an event with them, or I try and find somebody the first time I get in the door that I know, and I engage with them. And we got to the point you have a wing person, and you help each other with introductions. Tad can tell you about crop circles and the training you get in MBA, but you help each other. So if I'm in a conversation and there's somebody that I know is there, and a friend of mine comes over that may not know them, I just introduce them and I make that connection, and it's so much easier. If I'm going in cold, I say, if I go to this event, it's 2 hours. I need to speak with 2 people tonight. I don't need to speak with all 200. And as an introvert, I can tell you an extrovert's going to come in here and talk to 50 or 60 people and remember a handful, and it's going to be superficial conversation. As an introvert, I can come in, I can meet 2 people, I can have a deep, longer conversation that's meaningful for us both. I will remember those details, I will reach out, and it just goes so much further. And I actually get energized by those conversations once I get past that initial piece. So I met Steve Nelson. He was doing a after school, like an evening hour session on real estate. I was interested in real estate, didn't know Steve. I wasn't actually a student. I showed up. I caught the second half of it, and I went, that's interesting. And then 6 months later, I reached out to him and I said, hey, I've educated myself a little bit more on real estate. Have a few questions. Can I pay and take you to lunch? He refused to let me pay, but we went out to lunch, had a great hour conversation. That was in 2019, and that was it. And then in 2022, we decided to sell our house. Guess who I called? Steve. Great, sold our house. We had some interactions. All right. Well, 2025 hits. I'm looking to pivot from BCG. I want to come back to Cedar City. I have a list of 8 people that I met here at SUU that I reached out to. You know, anybody that's selling a business, any gaps in the market that needs a business for somebody to start, etc. Steve was one of those. It was a soft connection made through SUU that I had not maintained. And I reached out. We had a conversation. He sent me in 2 or 3 different directions that didn't work out. Gave it a few months, came back, said, hey, it's been a few months. Thanks for those. Anything else? Well, yeah, we're starting up this new community at Goodboro. Think it fits your strengths. Would you be interested? And here I am. So SUU continues and will continue to influence my career.
I love that. I want to broadcast that to the world, what you just shared. It's so true. Okay, Lisa Nicole, we're glad you're here. I love this question because we're going from corporate to nonprofit. Are there any key differences between being a leader at a corporation versus a nonprofit organization? I'm hoping to implement change and generate more revenue via grants, donations at our community animal shelter. So different than a for-profit, but very, very valuable.
Yep.
So enlighten us there.
Very much so. I don't have that much experience in nonprofits. There is some difference in the leadership style from the little bit that I've seen, because you're dealing so much more with a volunteer base, donors, etc. The biggest thing that I would say is find some nonprofits that you think run really well, that you look up to, and reach out to them and ask them that. You know, understand some differences, what's helped them be successful, and go from there. If you want connections, there's many on campus. So that would be my recommendation. There's some more on the soft skills differences, I would say. You're driving towards a vision as opposed to driving towards the bottom line. The bottom line's there, but it's not priority number one.
Great. Perfect. We've got one more question, then we've got a lightning round about the best book you've ever read. So on leadership.
Yep.
So the next question is about networking. A lot of people are terrified of initiating conversations with companies they are interested in. What tips can you offer people on that? Who should they look for? How can they contact them? And what do they say/ask?
Yep. So we talked on this a little bit. The only other pieces I would add is at Cornell, we had what was called a LAMP list. LAMP stood for something that I couldn't tell you right now. But essentially it was which companies do you want to work for? And then you identified potential connections, primarily using LinkedIn and the alumni database. And then you would reach out to them cold, and just say, can we have a conversation for 15, 20 minutes? And you build those up. A lot of the time, if you're recruiting, I don't know if it's free for you guys as students, but pay for LinkedIn Premium. That's where a lot of them came in, and it's figuring out either direct messages from there or mutual connections, and you reach out to your mutual connection and say, hey, do you have a good relationship? Can you make an introduction? It's going to career fairs. It's calling up the company at the front desk and saying, hey, I've been researching your company, curious who the hiring manager is or somebody I could speak to. And just having those conversations. And maybe part of the fear is that if I screw up this conversation, I'll never have a chance. Assume the best in people. Do a little bit of research before, come in well prepared, and just have some conversations. Start out with just understanding the company, the role, investigative stuff. Be a human, they'll be a human, and it goes easier. So the last piece there is being proactive. I've seen this amongst my fellow T-Birds here. We need to be earlier in the process, and we need to be more proactive, and we need to increase the amount of networking that we do up front. And you will see drastic changes for the better as you start to apply for jobs and evaluate opportunities.
So true. And then last question as we wrap up, what's the best book you've ever read on leadership development?
I'll tell you, it's been a minute. I need to get back into it. Go to Eric Kirby and ask him all of his recommendations. I don't know if he still teaches a leadership course as an adjunct or not, now that he's off campus. One that he went through is how to win friends and how to win friends and influence people. Dale Carnegie, I think. Fantastic. I've read a lot of Jim Collins over the years, etc. I don't read as much now. I listen. So I listen to a lot of podcasts. I'm on LinkedIn. That's my social media. I don't do Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or anything. I'm on LinkedIn. And so I follow people there. And maybe that's my last piece of parting advice is when you think about the 5 people closest to you that influence you or your sphere, oftentimes we just think of the people directly around us, which is easy in a classroom on campus. It's harder for those of you that are online, that are working, that don't have the same camaraderie that you get in person. You should have those people near you, whether it's your neighborhood or business or anything else. But those can also be people who have no idea who you are. I can tell you that I have been tremendously influenced by influencers, by people who write books, do podcasts, etc., create content on social media. And I feel like they are my friends, my peers, my mentors, because I spend so much time with them. I think my recap this year, I listened to 40,000 minutes in 2025 on my podcast app or something. It was something like 35 days. Think of those. If you want to be like somebody, if you want to learn a topic, find somebody that you look up to, that you appreciate, that you get your perspective from. One of those for me is Nick Huber. He's a fellow Cornell alum, focuses on sweaty startups. He's a multimillionaire. He'll push hundreds of millions, I expect. But he comes across as a down-to-earth dad. He's got 2 kids, and I loved on Christmas, he posted a picture of his Christmas tree. Each kid got one present, even though he could have bought them each a house, and so find people that will make you better and just ingest in person, online, via audio. It's incredible.
Yeah. Well, Brandon, this has been fantastic. Last question. Are you open if people connect with you on LinkedIn?
Absolutely. The default should be if you know somebody on LinkedIn or want to connect, just send them a request. So I'll watch for your invitation, send them my way. It's helpful if you have a note. If we connect, and you want to schedule a call on something else, I'm absolutely open to it. And appreciate the time today.
Perfect. Thank you for your time and your wisdom and expertise. And let's continue to stay connected now that you're back in town. That's fantastic. For next week, our guest will be Jen Anderson. She's a professional career coach. She's going to talk about personal branding. So we'll dive a little deeper into that topic about how do you brand yourself, especially in the age of AI. The week after that, we have a leadership professor from Kennesaw State in Georgia. Sam Allman will be here with us. So we hope you join us. Tell your friends. Every Friday at noon. It's time together with the Grad and Online group and learn about careers. So thanks, Brandon. Everyone have a great weekend.
Thank you. For next week, I'll put a plug in. Think about your personal brand. That will be critical and come with questions. I have an uncle that was a financial advisor. He was always the guy that wore cufflinks, and that's how he stood out. You know, there's a realtor in town, Steve Holm. He's known as the redheaded realtor, or the flat top realtor. Like, creating a brand for you will be so critical to help you stand
Yeah.
out. So that next session, maybe I'll join.
Yeah,
That
you
sounds
should
great.
join. Yeah, and that's what Jen does. That's her job. So she's going to talk to us about how we create and maintain. So thank you. Well, hope to see you all back next week at noon. Take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you all.